Hello and welcome to News 6 Extra. I am streaming executive producer Thomas Mates, filling in for Julie Broughton today. She has the day off, and next week she'll be filling in for Chief Meteorologist Candace Campos on the morning show Monday and Tuesday, so we'll be spending some time together. We've got a lot to get to, but right now we are currently waiting for a news conference to start in downtown Orlando. A survivor of sexual abuse is getting ready to speak and share his story following a triple homicide in Palm Bay last year. A priest, the priest's sister, and the gunman's grandfather were all killed in that shooting. Police believe that the gunman may have been sexually abused by the priest, Father Bob Hoffner, and now a lawsuit is being filed against the Diocese of Orlando in response to that abuse, to the abuse that this other victim alleges to have experienced. So when that happens, we'll try to bring some of that to you live, but it is streaming on clickorlando.com and on the News 6 YouTube page. So if you are looking to keep up with that, check out those. And of course, we'll have all the latest coming up on News 6 at 4. Again, this news conference is set to start any minute. Also set to start any minute, not really any minute, it's going to start on Sunday, but the 2025 hurricane season. All week long, we have been bringing you stories about how you can get yourself and your family and your property prepared for any potential storms coming out of the Atlantic this season. It's something we all as Floridians have to do every year, but better to be prepared than rushing at the last minute when a storm is on its way to get prepared. Of course, we're going to be looking at how mangroves can be used to prevent beach erosion. It's a big problem, especially as those storms come through. News 6 anchor Justin Wormuth has that story. We're also going to be taking a look at flood maps, the changes to them, and how you need to know your risk for flooding, especially here in Florida. And, the Kevin Guthrie, the head of emergency management for the state, he said that if it rains at your house, you need flood insurance. That was a story Julie Broughton brought us earlier this week. So we'll get to all of that in just a moment, but first we need to check out today's forecast, and for that we turn to News 6 meteorologist David Nazario. David, how are you doing?
Good, Thomas. As a matter of fact, to piggyback what you said about this upcoming Sunday, we're just about back. It's going to be that trademark time of the year yet again.
Yep, absolutely. Well, we will talk more about that in a minute. You actually have a story for us today about the military's response to hurricanes, and we'll have that coming up. But we got to talk about the weather right now because we've already seen some rain. We're expecting potentially some severe weather later, and tomorrow might be a bit of a washout, at least in the morning.
Exactly, yeah. As a matter of fact, we went ahead and created a pretty spectacular graphic to walk you through all that for the day today. So let's get right into it. This is our severe weather risk. We are once again blanketed by that level 1 marginal risk across our viewing area from Gainesville all the way through to the southern peripheries of Brevard, Osceola, and Polk County. So any of you in between there, we could have a chance at an isolated strong thunderstorm, let alone a severe thunderstorm at that as we go throughout the day today. But I also want to caveat that by we've seen a early arrival in some showers and storms even here outside the studio. I stepped outside a little over 2 hours ago and there was already rain coming down maybe a couple miles down the street. So that could possibly suppress a little bit of that activity. The last few days when things really got to popping, we had the sun shining. It was very hot out. Today it's a little more rained in. So we'll have to kind of wait and see exactly what we have in store as we get closer to the warmest parts of the day. But either way, here's a breakdown of your weather risks. We have lightning and rain as the top contenders for the greatest risk areas we'll be watching throughout our viewing area this afternoon, the rest of the day today on your Friday. Wind is going to be runner-up to that. We have a lot of gusty winds within these thunderstorms. Hail coming in a whopping third place, and then naturally we haven't had any tornado warnings, thankfully. But of course, because of all the wind involved in this setup, we've got a really good westerly wind flow in the mid to upper levels of our environment, whipping across the peninsula. You can see that here plain as day when I switch us over to the future radar. Or actually, first, let's get you to the live radar. And as a matter of fact, either way, you can see it plain as day what's steering those showers and storms. Kind of near us in Orlando, we had those precursor thunderstorms moving through. They've now officially exited through Titusville, trying to build a little bit extra stuff up near the villages in Sumter and Lake County, northern portions of Polk. Like I said, we're going to have to wait and see if there's enough energy and oomph provided by our afternoon heating brought to us by the sun, and if there's any kind of additional mechanism to get these thunderstorms forming, alongside the sea breeze around that classic 4 to 5 o'clock threshold. Now, looking at our future radar model, courtesy of our in-house model, you can see that westerly flow across the peninsula is going to drive everything west to east throughout the rest of the day today. But notice that a lot of us are not going to see a tremendous amount of that rainfall, at least not as of yet. You can see as we go through the very early morning hours of Saturday, I'm not going to go too far in advance just for the sake of watching for the models to adjust. That's when our frontal boundary, believe it or not, yes, a somewhat unseasonable boundary is going to come down through our neck of the woods here and kind of flip the pattern upside down for a little bit. I have a couple articles over on Click Orlando if you want to read a little bit more as to what I mean by flipping our pattern upside down, but it's going to change some things around here. Hopefully it won't be as hot and humid, at least as much as it has been over the last few weeks. Rain chances, it goes without saying, for the day today, pretty scattered across our area, and then tomorrow increasing that coverage, especially closer to the Four Corners counties and the east coast of Florida. And then, because of the time of year, we're watching. We've already started watching. We're looking at some possible tropical cyclone formation number 2, I should say. We already have Alvin out there in the eastern Pacific. Now we're watching for, I believe their next name is Barbara. National Hurricane Center has a little something highlighted in yellow down there off the coast of Mexico. And then we're also going to be watching here. Right there. I'll keep my eyes peeled alongside meteorologist Jonathan Kagis for a potential attempt at our first named storm as we get deeper into the middle portions of June. But in the meantime, we're not tracking any kind of tropical action in the Atlantic Basin just yet. Let's get you over to your 7-day forecast so we can wrap up. You can see rain chances are going to be sticking around, especially into the first portion of the final weekend of May. And then it looks like, believe it or not, as we turn the calendars into June 1st, could be one of our better days we've seen in a little bit. And then also note the temperatures do come down just a tad, but then we are right back into those 90-degree temperatures as we get closer and closer to the calendar start of the summertime. Hurricane season starts this Sunday, but we still got a little bit before the calendar indicates it is now the summer season as well.
Absolutely. I'm know that Sunday is going to be a little more comfortable, a little cooler. It's been brutally hot recently, so at least we have that to look forward to once we get past all the rain.
Oh, yeah.
Today and tomorrow. Now, as I mentioned before, you've got a story for us today. As we've been harping all week long, hurricane season is upon us. It is predicted to be an active one. Last year it was an active one, but regardless of how active it is, it only takes one storm to really upset the apple cart, as it were. But, you come at a lot of this from the military perspective. You are currently in the Navy. You were previously in the Air Force. Talk to us a little bit about how the military approaches these sorts of storms.
So right off the rip, what I want to let everyone watching know is I've attended a number of different events, and I actually have a few more coming up through the month of June in a few of our local counties in terms of raising hurricane preparation awareness and how to stay ahead of the storm as we rock into another hurricane season. And the two main factors that I've heard again and again and again emphasized was communication. Number one, communication's pivotal for every relationship in your lifetime, and then training. Believe it or not, training was the key word used at every seminar, every conference, every county event, every local event that I've attended. And I thought, what a better way to emphasize training, especially on a year-round scale, than the United States military, because they always used to tell us if you weren't training, or I should say, if you weren't dealing with a real-world situation at the time, you better be training for one. Before joining the News 6 weather team, I was a part of a very different team. Having served 10 years as a United States Air Force weather forecaster and now a reservist with the United States Navy, I wanted to bring you all a new and fresh lens to look through when it comes to training and preparing for the hurricane season ahead. It goes without saying the 2024 season left its mark on Central Florida. Between protecting lives and property to safeguarding our way of life, local and state officials are currently working round the clock to get us ready for what's ahead. I had the wonderful opportunity to revisit my roots with the MacDill Air Force Base weather team and to tour their base operations building. To this day, it is still left in a heavily damaged state thanks to storm surge and hurricane force winds. I also got a few testimonies from the personnel involved in operations during Helene and Milton, to include Airman Tessa Bradley, who was one of the SARM team members who had to prepare the office for impact before evacuating her and her family.
I am a resident here at MacDill. I have 2 children. I live in base housing, and I remember last year at Milton, we did get a notification that it was time to move and leave the base, evacuate, and I just remember it just being so stressful. Like, even though we had all the resources available and plenty of notice, we left, and then it was just terrifying to come back to, like, what would it look like.
This is a harrowing reminder that even the 1% who suit up and wear the uniform on a day-to-day basis face the same tribulations we do as Floridians during a hurricane season.
The majority of our job here as weather forecasters is to protect our assets, such as the aircraft and the people that work on them and around them. We have to do our best to give the best picture of when we're going to get significant weather, when we're going to have people stay indoors, when they can be out on the flight line doing their work.
Senior Airman Johnson went on to tell a bit of his experience during Milton and Helene, as well as what he endured during the evacuation process.
So we were still dealing with the leftovers from Helene. The water was still up everywhere.
He went on to mention last-minute preps and recovery going on simultaneously between both hurricanes. Technical Sergeant Kenneth Sallet, NCO in charge at the weather flight during their day operations, gave me the lowdown on the products they build and train on a routine basis.
So when we came back, we had no cell service, and our teams were relying on SATCOMs and handheld communications to get across base. So it was our job to inform them that you could see some degradation across the base with this information, so just be aware of that as you're coming back for recovery operations.
The green, yellow, and red colors are part of what's called a stoplight chart. As the name implies, green means go, and red means you better stop. Alongside their own in-house forecast models, the Air Force has implemented a one-stop shop for weather data. Bifrost, a new program, has now gone fully online. So can you add specific layers to Bifrost as part of the analysis and forecast process?
Yeah. So the way that they're trying to do it is have like one map be all-encompassing, so I can do anything that all of our maps before did, but in one place.
On top of combining model data into one overlay, this also helps expedite the communication piece and getting those critical watches, warnings, and advisories to folks who may need it at a moment's notice. To help with that communication piece, the Air Force designates their own news and public affairs team. It was actually through Second Lieutenant Erica McCammon I was given this chance to get into the MacDill Air Force Base weather flight. This is what she had to say and what her role looks like during disaster.
A big part of my job as a public affairs officer is to communicate not only with people on base, but also with the local community and to build and strengthen those relationships.
The two most important pieces leading up to this very moment as you're watching for the hurricane season and everything in between has to do with training and communication. Now, it may look different for every one of us, but here at News 6, we're going to walk you through exactly how it is you can get yourself ready and stay ahead of the storm at a moment's notice. Communication is the backbone to all that we do on a day-to-day. Your relationships, your family, your workday, it's all encompassing. Have you dialed in your preps and communicated what is done or still needs doing? We've got you covered to get you fully geared up before the first storm rolls in. Meteorologist David Nazario, News 6.
Yeah, David, that is all very interesting how like the military also has to work with civilians, making sure they're also informed, those around the base. So it really goes to show that it's a very, I mean, as with everything with the military, it's a very symbiotic relationship between them and the civilian community.
It is big time, and that's why I wanted to bring something new and fresh to the table for our viewers, especially being still fairly new to News 6. I wanted to not only take the background that gravitated me in your all's direction from the jump start, but also just further reinforce that while state and local officials are working to practice and prepare, even the military, who at the end of the day, their job is to safeguard life and limb of the United States, the general United States, the contiguous U.S., they still have to face the same level of threats, preparation, and they are training. No kidding. I recall the amount of training we did every single day of the year. No kidding. If you were not actively dealing with something of conflict or wartime interest, you were actively training for that same event. And I know the same thing goes into, tropical weather events, especially since they do affect, on the Air Force side, personnel and assets to include aircraft and other munitions. But even now, during my time in the United States Navy, I've held positions that helped with delegating and coordinating the movement of different fleet and warships out there that are in harm's way, especially during Hurricane Helene last year. So training, again, it may sound kind of silly, but what I like to do to break it down for everybody is think about it this way. every professional athlete out there, they don't wait 2 to 3 days before a competition to train up for that event. And why should we do the same when it comes to something like a natural disaster in the form of a hurricane?
Absolutely. And, it's they, much like us, much like first responders, when the storm is coming, they're heading into work. They're leaving their families behind to deal with those things. And that one soldier, I can't remember her name offhand, but she was saying, she has 2 children at home, and she remembers them having to evacuate while she was still on duty.
Exactly. And that's another kind of second level reason I wanted to bring this to the table as well. Is you look at the military, you look at our armed forces, especially in today's environment, without getting too into the weeds on that one, and we forget that they are people too. We are people too. We have families, we have loved ones, we have jobs, but we have other personal priorities that we need to take care of at the home front, no matter when duty calls. And duty can call anytime, any day of the year.
Absolutely. Well, David, thank you so much for your time. And I know that as we get closer to hurricane season, we're going to have even more coverage. And you and Jonathan especially will be on top of every development that could come our way. You'll keep us updated at clickorlando.com. David, thank you so much for your time, and you have a pleasant day.
You as well, Thomas. Thank you so much.
All right, no problem. So we are going to take a quick break, but before we do that, we do want to take a moment to go to that news conference we spoke about at the beginning of the show, happening in downtown Orlando. The Diocese of Orlando is facing a lawsuit around sexual abuse. One of the victims is there with his attorney. Let's listen in.
Reluctant to turn over the full file. And again, this is my experience with dioceses across the country, that not that they're destroying the file, but they're withholding key documents, and eventually we go back to court and we will get them. We're entitled to them. Yes.
Sean, have you kept up at all with your friend Brandon? And to be clear, that's Brandon Capas?
He passed away.
I meant before he passed away.
Yeah.
What can you tell us about that and about what it was like for you when you'd heard about him passing?
Well, I moved to New York, and that's where I currently live now, and we didn't really communicate as much as when I lived down here. He would say, as in Brandon would say, that he would still be visiting Father Bob, which I don't consider him a father. I kind of consider him like a monster in a way now. And he would just say that he would go over there to help him out or do Bible studies or I don't know if I really answered your question, but
Yes.
Why choose to file the lawsuit now and not maybe during when Father Bob was still alive and a time to, I guess, get both sides of the story?
Well, I think I won't speak for Sean, but I will just say, in my experience representing thousands of victims of childhood sexual abuse, it takes time for victims to come forward. And I don't know that Sean would have come forward this soon if the police weren't involved last year and they contacted Sean. And so I think after finally some of the facts came out this year is when Sean felt safe enough to come forward. And that's really another issue I think that's going on kind of behind the scenes here. We're hearing from a lot of witnesses. They're scared to come forward. People are still scared of the Catholic Church. And I'm here to tell you, you're safe.
Again, that is the attorney for a sexual abuse survivor. The sexual abuse survivor is standing there behind him and speaking in downtown Orlando as they file suit against the Archdiocese of Orlando following the death of Robert Hoffner, the priest who is accused of committing that abuse. He was shot and killed last year in a string of murders that were, police believe, motivated by that sexual abuse. We will carry the full, the entire presser, the entire news conference happening right now at clickorlando.com and on the News 6 YouTube page. You can watch it all there, and we will have updates coming up on News 6 at 4. We're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we'll be taking a look at more hurricane preps that you can undertake, knowing your flood risk, and of course also what are some solutions to beach erosion, a big problem here, especially as those storms come through. That'll be coming up in just about 2 minutes.
bunch of red in your grocery package? Why is it? It doesn't say cut stuff out. In the square. Are we supposed to cut that out? You all right, everybody?
No, it's from Paul's stuff. Whatever Paul put in there should be good.
Okay.
It's supposed to be sushi. One could be,
Because Tom says
I checked the source. I checked the source for her package. That is the source I put in there, and it is 154.
okay.
Welcome back to News 6 Extra. I'm streaming executive producer Thomas Mates, filling in for Julie Broughton. She has the day off. The time now is 12:52. Hurricane season is set to get underway on Sunday, and it is something that every Floridian has had on their mind since it ended last year. Last year was a very active season. This season is also expected to be very active. One of the big problems that we know comes out of every hurricane season is erosion along our beaches. But the state is now saying that there may be a natural solution to this problem, better than seawalls potentially. News 6 anchor Justin Warmoth has that story.
These trees here aren't just scenic, they are storm-fighting superstars. I'm Justin Warmoth along the Halifax River in Ormond Beach. Mangroves can blunt storm surge and protect shorelines from erosion. Here's the catch. More than 80% of native mangroves in the state of Florida have been wiped out, and that's why biologists are racing to replant them up and down the coast.
I've always had an interest in anything on the water.
Mike and Sandy Mikowski have lived along the Halifax River since the mid-90s.
I'm either on the water, in the water, or near the water.
Yeah.
Most of the time. So I like to see things survive.
But with rising river levels and stronger hurricanes, that water becomes a problem. And you said that the debris line was on your fence, I mean, almost
to the top. Of the way.
Almost to the top. Often spilling into their backyard each time a storm passes.
We know that the levels are rising. We can't do anything about that, but we want to try to mitigate and keep as much of the land as we can and be ecologically mindful in how we approach things.
I have a spot over here if you want.
The solution? A forgotten natural defender, mangroves.
Mangroves are our natural hurricane protection. They are 90% effective against hurricanes. Thank you.
News 6 was there as Mara Skadden and her team from the Marine Resources Council planted 30 red mangroves in between the coquina rocks that line the Mikowski's 100-foot shoreline.
Look at his little roots.
Eventually, those roots will grow into a natural storm shield. Mangroves knock down storm surge, fight erosion, and stabilize vulnerable shorelines. Think of them as a seawall, only better.
There was a recent study that showed that living shorelines are 8 times more effective at protection than seawalls.
8 times?
8 times.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a stat.
Yes, it is.
Oh my.
And they're 2.5 times less expensive than a seawall.
Mangroves are also like nature's Brita filter. They clean the water, they absorb pollutants, and they even remove more CO2 per acre than rainforests. It's almost like they're secret weapons, even though it shouldn't be a secret.
Agreed.
But over the years, more than 80% of Florida's native mangroves have been wiped out, mostly due to shoreline development. That's why the Marine Resources Council has ramped up its restoration efforts, growing mangroves, some 10,000 of them, in a nursery at their Palm Bay campus.
It sounds like we have a lot of trees, right? 10,000 is a lot. We're not meeting demand, and we're genuinely concerned that we're going to run out.
Skadden says they're up to 2 plantings a week. They load up however many mangroves are needed into a U-Haul and take care of the rest.
If our homeowners are coming out and spending the money for us to install, we want them to be successful.
For the Mikowskis,
so that's why they're called white mangroves. If they catch the sun and they're really salty, they look white.
It was money well spent to protect their slice of paradise.
We highly recommend them. Call them, donate to them, please support them.
This is a perfect test. We got waves and their burlap is getting wet.
In Ormond Beach.
All right, we're happy.
Justin Mormouth, News 6.
Another issue that we always hear about during hurricanes is flooding. And, we know that some areas of our of Central Florida are just prone to flooding. But do you know if you live in one of those areas? News 6 anchor Lisa Bell went to talk to emergency leaders in Seminole County about how you can better understand the flood maps and the risk to you and your property.
See, if you drive along on Orange Boulevard, you kind of wonder why they built there.
Seminole County Emergency Manager Alan Harris says new mapping technology has improved accuracy to predict flood-prone areas, and residents need to know their risk.
And the way that we can look at things now through topography and GPS and all of that, we can see where water will collect. So some people are really happy because it takes them out of the flood map, out of the flood zone. And then some people are not so happy because it puts them in a flood zone.
It's mapping technology that did not exist when Harris first stepped into this role in 2006.
How has flooding changed in the 2 decades here in Seminole County that you've been in this role?
So prior to 2004, it was really a historical look at flooding. We hadn't really had a lot of flooding because there hadn't been a lot of hurricanes. 2008 was historic. It broke all the records for flooding in Seminole County. So we had to go out and do flood mapping. We had to do flood gauge assessments. So because the water had never got to that level, so we didn't know at 11 feet, what is it going to do to these roads? What is it going to do to those areas?
Take us back real quick to 2008, because a lot of people didn't live here back in 2008, and that was a tropical storm.
It was not a hurricane, yeah. It was a tropical storm. It was a very slow-moving tropical storm. Never a hurricane over the Central Florida area, but an incredible amount of water.
All of those water bodies have essentially feed into the St. Johns River at the
Joe
end of
LaFazzo is an engineer with Seminole County's Public Works Department.
What is that showing me, basically?
He constantly studies the area's topography to predict flood risk.
This area in the blue is considered Zone AE, which is a high-risk zone.
The new flood data that LaFazzo and the county collect is eventually sent to FEMA and can be used to update FEMA maps.
This means that this area here has a high possibility of flooding.
But updating those maps can take years and is no match for Florida's rapidly changing weather. In fact, the last time Seminole's FEMA maps were updated was more than 15 years ago.
I practice what I preach. So I'm not in a flood zone, but I still have flood insurance. Why do I have flood insurance? Because things can happen. Stormwater systems can get clogged up because of tree damage and other types of issues.
That was News 6 anchor Lisa Bell reporting. Remember, we have a wealth of information about getting prepared for this hurricane season at clickorlando.com/hurricane. Again, that's clickorlando.com/hurricane. We have checklists. We have extensive coverage on safety for generator use and what you should be packing in your hurricane kit. Head to clickorlando.com and check that out for yourself. That'll do it for us here on News 6 Extra. We will be back starting on News 6 at 4. Michelle Morgan will be in for Julie Broughton with your forecast. And of course, we'll have all the day's headlines, including an update on that news conference we brought you earlier, the lawsuit that the Diocese of Orlando is now facing. Again, that'll all be coming up starting on News 6 at 4. Thank you so much for your time and have a pleasant day.